Special thanks to Mike Soze for not necessarily suggesting per se, but rather inspiring this topic. On my preview video for how my views on the paranormal have changed, Mike wrote the following.
I often got the question if I ever experienced something supernatural or paranormal myself, and I always had to give them a big no for an answer.
Well, I can't say that I've never personally experienced anything paranormal or supernatural. What I can say is that for someone who is as into this sort of thing as I am, I've had very, very few experiences throughout the course of my life that I am convinced beyond a shadow of a doubt were of a supernatural or paranormal nature. I've been meaning to make a video on the Hat Man for some time now. Incidentally, an encounter with this entity just so happens to be among the very few paranormal encounters I've had in my life. If you've not heard of this entity, don't worry, because in the first part of this video, I'll elaborate further upon that. I'll end this video with an account of my experience with it and my personal thoughts about it. The Hat Man seems to be a variation of a shadow person or shadow man. So let's begin there. Shadow men are relative newcomers to the paranormal scene. While the exact origins remain a bit unclear, the terms shadow men and shadow people may have even been coined in the 21st century. One of the first detailed public explorations into this phenomenon was on an April 12, 2001 broadcast of Coast to Coast AM, hosted by the great, late Art Bell. During the broadcast, linked in the description, Art Bell and a First Nation elder by the name of Thunder Strikes spoke at length about this bizarre phenomenon. According to Thunder Strikes, shadow entities have been a part of his culture's oral tradition since around 1100 BC. He went on to state that they were believed to be interdimensional beings, but were not considered inherently good or evil. Toward the beginning of the broadcast, Art referenced the fact that a couple of his listeners had previously contacted him to give their own frightening encounters with shadow beings. At this point in the show, one could easily surmise these encounters to be extremely rare and mostly confined to Native American folklore. However, this would quickly change after a listener submitted a suggestion, which was read on air about 38 minutes in, and I'm going to play that right now.
But somebody has sent me a fast blast that makes sense. Say, Art, from Glenn in Washington, how's about asking for some drawings of shadow people from the listeners who have seen them? That should be interesting. Gosh, Glenn, I agree. Anybody out there willing to draw a shadow person for us? And then scan it and send it to Keith Rowland? What a really good idea. How would you do that? Well, you draw it. Do it quickly here. And then you email it to webmaster@artbell.com. I repeat, webmaster@artbell.com. Wouldn't it be nice to have some visuals of what it is that we're trying to talk about? This is not so easy, this discussion. It's real, though.
Replies quickly began pouring in, not like a trickle, but more like a tsunami. It became immediately apparent that this phenomenon was far more widespread than previously thought. They are sometimes seen individually, although frequently they appear in groups. When a group of shadow people appear, occasionally there will be one that stands out from the rest. The most notable difference between this entity and the others is that this entity is seen wearing some sort of hat with a bill that wraps all the way around it, hence the name Hat Man. It should be noted, however, that the Hat Man isn't always accompanied by other shadow entities. There have been numerous reports of encounters, much like my own, in which the Hat Man simply appeared by itself. Though descriptions of the Hat Man vary to some degree, an intense feeling of fear is always reported by those who have encountered it. Encounters most commonly occur at night in the individual's bedroom. Sometimes the individual is unable to move during the encounter. As such, mainstream science believes the supposed encounters are nothing more than hypnagogic hallucinations brought on by an episode of sleep paralysis. While this is certainly a perfectly reasonable explanation, and even I believe this to be the case for some of the alleged encounters, sleep paralysis simply cannot account for all Hat Man encounters. When multiple people are all seeing the same thing at the same time, well, that's not sleep paralysis. My encounter took place in Lake Lure, North Carolina, ironically at a Christian summer camp of all places. I debated as to whether or not I should give the name of the camp. I decided not to because I am certain they wouldn't want any kind of paranormal publicity. It happened either the summer of 2003 or 2004. This is the outside of the cabin where I served as a camp counselor both of these summers. I covered up the faces of the campers in this picture because YouTube is getting weird when it comes to showing minors, but anyway. Shortly after lights out one particular night, I could hear a few of my campers whispering about something, but I wasn't really paying attention. Then I heard one of them say, "Drew, what's that?" I sat up and that camper was pointing to the interior of the same wall shown in this image. And unfortunately I don't have any pictures of the interior of the cabin. I was looking through my photos and for whatever reason I never took a picture of the inside of it. But anyway, this camper got my attention. As I began to focus, I started to see what the commotion was about. Plain as day, I saw the outline of a man slowly pacing back and forth along the length of the wall. The shadow was approximately my height, around 6 feet tall, and was wearing a distinctive hat with a wraparound bill. I looked around to see what could possibly be casting this shadow, but I couldn't figure it out. By this time, the whole cabin was awake and nervously watching the odd sight. I could tell they were afraid, and truth be told, I was a bit frightened myself. As if by instinct, I wanted to find some sort of reasonable explanation to put everyone's mind at ease. I tried to explain it away as the shadow of a tree being blown in the wind. As if sensing what I was trying to accomplish, my co-counselor was quick to agree with my explanation. By the way he was looking at it though, I could tell he knew this wasn't the case. I don't remember exactly how long we observed the shadow pacing back and forth, but if I had to guess, I'd estimate this went on for around 10 to 15 minutes. After that, the shadow retreated to a darkly lit corner of the cabin, and that was the last we saw of it. To this day, I still have no idea exactly what it was, but it was the only paranormal thing I ever witnessed in my years working at the camp. That weekend, after the campers had left, I drove a few other staff members down to Asheville, where we'd often go to unwind. I told my passengers about the strange experience I had that week. One of them, who had worked there many more years than I, had some interesting stories of his own. He told me of a cabin which used to be situated very close to where I was staying. This cabin, known as the A-frame, was torn down prior to my first summer working there. Apparently, the A-frame was notorious for strange happenings. Hearing ghostly footsteps and waking to find things rearranged were fairly common occurrences in the A-frame. The official reason given for its demolition was so that a newer, nicer cabin could be built in its place. I heard plenty of old-timers speculate that there was another reason, but rarely would they elaborate any further. Now, you may be wondering if anyone had ever died on the campgrounds. Sadly, the answer would be yes. In the 1950s, a camper got too close to the edge, near where these pictures were taken, and in the 1970s, a counselor hit the support structure of a bridge while water skiing. The victims in both of these tragic accidents were fairly young, and I don't believe either were connected in any way to what we saw in the cabin that night. My opinion back then was that, whatever it was likely demonic. After all, it's a Christian camp. As such, I believe there's a lot of spiritual warfare occurring there. That's why I wasn't surprised by the possibility that what we witnessed was some kind of demonic manifestation. fast forward a few years, I watched a YouTube video discussing a particular shadow entity whose description was a perfect match to what we saw that night. It literally gave me goosebumps because prior to that, I had no idea that so many others worldwide were encountering what seemed to be the exact same entity I saw years ago. Thanks again to Mike Soze, and if you've not heard of his channel, Mike Soze Mysteries, I strongly encourage you to check that out because he has some great content over there, and also he is trying to rebuild his channel, so let's all give him some support, show him some love, head over there and subscribe to his channel as well. Thanks. Hey everyone, Drew here from Mad Cat Mysteries, and I hope you enjoyed the video you just watched. If you did, you can click on the subscribe button below. I'd appreciate it. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.